How do you get promoted in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu? Well, first of all, don't cry for me, Argentina. I think concerning yourself overly much with when you're going to get promoted and how you're going to get promoted is not a great sign. Although it's nice to have goals and goal posts and things like that. So that is why those things exist, because otherwise it just feels like a long, arduous journey. I mean, to be frank, the belts exist to hide from you the reality that the journey never really ends. And that can be a very daunting realization. But the other side of that is the journey never ends. It's you're doing a hobby, an activity that has enrichment that never ends. So you can continuously work on jiu-jitsu. There's really no end to jiu-jitsu. There's never like a moment where you're like, oh, hey, yesterday I beat jiu-jitsu. Like, that doesn't work that way. So you can just keep going on and on and on and on. Okay. But how do most coaches view promotion? I think is kind of an important thing to understand. One, there's a lot to be said here, but different gyms do things differently. I'll tell you what, I'm critical of an attendance only basis for promotion. There are certain gyms that I know that do that, and I don't think it is a good way to promote people just on the basis of, well, you came to X number of classes, because just because you're there at class does not mean that you are absorbing jiu-jitsu and understanding it always better. I do think that attendance is a fairly I think there's obviously a very high correlation between class attendance and jiu-jitsu performance. Like, I'm sure that correlation is exceedingly high. As an instructor myself, I can say that it's a correlation that will generally bear out. On the other hand, I have seen it where that is not the case, and I do think I do think it's actually important to not promote people very quickly at any sort of gym, just because you really want to make sure that the standards of a gym, and like when you put a stripe on someone, if they were to go out, roll with someone similar size, similar amount of training time, as a gym, you should want your single stripe white belt to beat most of the other single stripe white belts. I think the worst case scenario for me that I could imagine is that my single stripe white belt loses to most single stripe white belts. That to me is something intolerable, and it's a big part of how I think about promotion. And because I do feel that, like, every stripe that you get, every belt that you get signifies the you get those things, and then you are actually expected to be able to represent your tribe. You're expected to be able to represent that thing that you earned. And if you cannot represent that thing, you shouldn't be wearing it. That's the truth of it. If, like, you're not able to represent it, it becomes rather meaningless. And I have definitely seen some belts and some stripes along these many years in jiu-jitsu where guys had belts or stripes that just were not in accordance with their ability. They could not represent those on the mat. And I think it's really embarrassing for that person. And I think a coach that does that to someone does them like an enormous disservice, because they feel almost like ashamed of what they have. I remember pretty early on in my jiu-jitsu days, I was still a white belt, and this blue belt came from some gym in the States. He was a Korean American kid, and nice guy. I liked him, but he had a blue belt, and he kind of made a big deal about having the blue belt, like, oh, you haven't been belted yet, oh, why is that kind of attitude. But he wasn't good. He sucked. And you know, all the white belts were basically a handful for him on the mats. You know, he was getting subbed by white belts, and he went out and competed at one point, and all he did for his entire match was back away and push his opponent. It never hit the ground. He attempted 0 takedowns. He just pushed off and basically stalled out for time. It was like, whew, what a hard match. And it's like, you could see all the insecurity in him. Like, you could see that he felt very insecure about having this belt that effectively made him a target, really, to the rest of us, because, you know, everybody likes to tap a belt higher than them. And yeah, I think his coaches did him an extreme disservice by giving him that belt. I would presume that the rest of their belts are not very good, and it really tarnishes the reputation of that gym. So I think it's really important to bear that in mind as you beg your coach, you know, and people get mad at their coach about, oh, I feel like I'm this good, but he hasn't promoted me. I think I'm this good or whatever. It's like, oh, really? Like, are you going to be willing to represent that? Because my suspicion is, if your coach is not promoting you, he doesn't think that you'll be able to represent his or her or their jiu-jitsu properly. So, you know, bear that in mind, that every single promotion comes with responsibility. But how do you get yourself promoted? Show up. I mean, show up is number one, because you can't get better if you don't show up. Then when you show up, trusting in what your coach is teaching 100%, and just applying that until you make it work. Your coach is showing you what they consider to be the most successful techniques. You know, that's why they're showing it to you. And when you show up and instead do the things you saw on YouTube, I wouldn't expect a promotion off of that. If your coach thought those were the better techniques, your coach would have given you those techniques. But they are providing you with what they think are the highest insights that they have achieved from the art. And so, you know, you keep applying those till they work. And, you know, it's, I got this from John Frankel, but, you know, if someone gives you the most expensive surfboard in the world, but you don't know how to surf, and we go out and we put you on the waves with the most expensive surfboard in the world, the best surfboard in the world, and you get, you know, washed out or whatever, you get rolled, like, that's not the surfboard's fault, right? You haven't learned the skill to navigate that surfboard. And, you know, your coach gives you the technique, but he doesn't give you skill. You have to develop the skill to actually make that technique work in an alive situation. And if you're not dedicating the time to being able to do that, then I don't know, you shouldn't expect promotion. So, I mean, because you could be actually even winning on the mats, but you're not doing the jiu-jitsu that your coach is working on. And yeah, I don't know. That's kind of a sticky gray area for me. Like, okay, you're winning, but are you violating, like, are you just being able to do it because you're bigger, stronger, faster, athletic, something like that? Usually people who complain about not getting promotions are a little bigger, a little faster, a little more athletic than other people. And, you know, just don't understand why they're not getting promoted. And the truth is, they're not using really any amount of jiu-jitsu. Like, they don't have any smoothness. There's no skill being demonstrated. They just happen to be this big kind of brute that can get it done. So that's my thoughts on promotion. I hope you enjoyed that. Go hit the mats. We're down here in New Braunfels, Texas. Hit us up if you're interested in coming and checking us out. One tribe, one vibe.